So, welcome back after the coffee break. Those of you who would like to join breakout session number 2 on the outcomes of Horizon Europe Cluster 2 and the Horizon 2020 projects, I would like to ask you to gather to the back of the room, and my colleagues Barbara and Kitty will guide you to the breakout session room. So please, I encourage you to stand up and go to the breakout session room with my colleagues Barbara and Kitty. Some other participants who are interested in the outcomes of successful projects. Okay, after the conference we will also provide you the recordings of that session as well, so you will be able to review it afterwards and enjoy the presentation of the colleagues. And now I give the floor to breakout session number 1 and the colleagues sitting here. So welcome, and please begin your session.
Thank you. Will you notify me when I have 5 minutes? Okay. Thank you. So good morning still, and welcome to this breakout session. I'm glad you picked this one. It will be worth it. We've selected well, we're 5 people in the session. We just might be more than the public, so we'll have to make aware that we don't ask you all the questions, but we might do that as well. Before we dive into the topic of skills, which was high on the agenda, we learned a lot about it already. We spoke about it quite a lot. We're going to approach it from different views. So I would like just my panelists first to present themselves shortly and to explain what their relation is with the Smart Specialization as a starter. Where are you within the web of Smart Specialization in your job or occupation? There's some microphones on the table, so Marko, if you'd like to start.
My name is Marko. I'm head of unit for Smart Specialization coordination at the Ministry of Cohesion and Regional Development in Slovenia, so the neighboring country. So we have a relatively strong 1.4 specific objective measure under policy objective 1 for skills in smart specialization. We are roughly investing 20 million in this financial perspective for skills, mainly for competence centers under domains of smart specialization. So that's my relation to that conference topic directly. Thanks.
Hello there, I am Péter Racskó from Hungary. I work for the National Research Development and Innovation Office, and I am head of strategical and monitoring department. Sorry, it's very long, but I think I know where I work. And we are responsible for the Hungarian S3 strategy, which means that we are responsible for monitoring it, to revise it, and to manage it, and for the rollout, not in the government, but also in the whole country. And why I'm here now, I think personally my background is education, so I'm coming from the education field, and because of that, I think it's very important for me to follow up how can we develop those skills which are not only needed for special requirements, but for the new technological life, or not to use so big words, but something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Marian.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Marian Belko, and I have an honor to represent here European Institute of Innovation and Technology, where I work as a head of entrepreneurship education section. So it's very directly linked to education. The EIT, in short, is the institute, is European Union body, is the instrument to support innovation across Europe. As such, the central team is located here in Budapest, but the whole operational model or operational arms are located everywhere all around Europe. Our modus operandi is supporting knowledge innovation communities, so creating ecosystems that they design and deliver and organize activities and concrete projects and concrete activities in supporting the innovation and entrepreneurship in Europe, so addressing the innovation gap, and that has a strong role in also linked to the smart specialization and other initiatives in the wide landscape. We're part of Horizon Europe as such, and my role specifically is overviewing the activities and initiatives that are linking the education institutions, in particular, and where the smart specialization and regional innovation comes is our new higher education institutions initiative, where the ambition of the EIT is to support universities and higher education institutions becoming leaders in their local ecosystems in the innovation process. I'll have, let's say, more time to talk about the details later, so just in brief.
Of course, we'll go into that. Thank you. John.
Yes, well, you heard from me yesterday, so I won't give a long introduction. As mentioned yesterday, I mean, my current job is to represent applied universities, which are very much involved in smart specialization, whether it's in their applied research and building competencies for the regional priorities. But I also supposedly am an expert on smart specialization because I worked 10 years at the Smart Specialization platform. And that's why I think maybe the other reason why I was invited here, someone found a report that I'd written on VET for smart specialization some years ago, and that's why I am here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Well, thank you. Well, I can hear some interesting combinations about VET, smart specialization, and especially education, which I think we'll delve into a little bit more during this session. As for myself, I'm Klaas Vansteenhuyse. I'm connected to one of these universities of applied sciences. My home institution is in Flanders, Belgium. It's called UCLL, but I'm also part of EURASHE, which is a European University Alliance. We're one of the 64 alliances at the moment. And for our alliance, we decided to focus on non-traditional centers or non-traditional regions, let's say regions which are bordering traditional strong centers. That, and secondly, we also have an alliance which only consists out of these universities of applied sciences. So we don't have the traditional research universities as did some of the first alliances. On a more personal note, I'm an archaeologist by training, which is quite interesting because you all know the most famous archaeologist in the world. He's called Indiana Jones, and in one of his movies, which is called The Last Crusade, he was tasked with an enormous challenge because he had a whole row of holy grails from which to choose from. And there were dozens of them. And the advice he got from the person in charge there was the one you all know. It said, choose wisely. And so that's, I think, what we have to do in the smart specialization strategy is to choose wisely and to see what we need to pick. So I have a personal connection to the theme of the conference. But that being said, and choose wisely is what you did or your organizations did in a way. You chose, or your regions chose, some of the topics to specialize in. We will not delve specifically into those topics, but because as we learned yesterday, they might differ a lot from region to region. But my first question to you would be, do you have an idea of how you would describe the word skills? Can we define skills as such? We talk a lot about it, but it feels like many people talk about it and they all have different ideas about it. Is it competence? Is it knowledge? Can we define it and thus tackle it later on? I see you're ready, Marko, to get a response on that.
So, there are basically, as Angelina from Latvia, my colleague, displayed yesterday, there are two basic elements in smart specialization. One is building ecosystem, and second is prioritization. Huh? And when we talk about ecosystem, then it is, of course, very important to develop competences in all sectors of the ecosystem, all stakeholders. And we rather talk about competences, particularly when it comes to the level of stakeholders who really do the job at the end, industries and research institutions. There we fund competence centers for each domain of smart specialization.
That's what you did in Slovenia. So
yeah.
You did fund competence centers on the national level.
Centers on the national level. Per domain of smart specialization. In this financial envelope, just for you to have a feel, for 2 million population, we disburse 15 million envelope for competence centers.
So you support these centers with 50 million euros in about how many topics?
Well, 9 topics. We do not have competence centers yet for all 9 domains, but pretty much that's the scale of funding, and they define the competences needed per domain, and then they do the training, and also suggest curricular changes for curricula in secondary schools and universities.
So each center has a list of competences specific
exactly.
to the theme.
Pretty much what was displayed yesterday that World Bank did for some of the regions
exactly.
in Western Balkans. Scheme. In Western Balkans, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Péter, do you have something similar to that, or for Hungary? Please grab a mic.
You mean competence centers?
Well, the question was, do you have a clear definition of what skills means in your ecosystem?
Yeah, I think if I want to say one word in one short sentence, then competence skill means that you're capable for doing something, and if you approach it from this side, then there are a lot of possible possible ways to approach it, but concretely, for instance, in S3 competence building, we have not only Hungary, but I think in EU we have a lot of issues, and in Hungary it's especially true. And the problem is not with that how we define skills, but the problem is how we spread it to different levels. So
what levels what are you talking about when you talk about levels?
It's if you want to spread, I don't know, a skill, that you have to talk differently to different targets. And for that, we realized it, and I think it is a huge issue in Hungary. Now we are establishing regional innovation platforms countrywide, and it's not only regional but also personal. So that means that companies can come in and they get consultancy, they get special special knowledge, personalized, tailor-made special knowledge, which also not only concentrates for the company, but also concentrates for the region's strengths. So what we want to do is to be very personal and very tailor-made in these centers.
Okay, so Yeah, so you have companies with specific questions and you have a tailor-made program to enhance the competences of persons within that company.
Yeah, and also we are preparing them for international, for instance, I3 calls, for Hungarian calls, so to get funds for that learning process and for innovation ideas. Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting case study as well. It's similar, I think, to the competence centers, but I remember tailor-made. Marian, when it comes to a larger organization such as yours, do you use a specific definition of skills, and how does it sound like?
It's obviously a very interesting problem or issue how to approach skills. We use skills and competencies, and in our case, our focus is really to diverting from knowledge specifically to the skills and competencies as some ability to demonstrate certain specific approach. And we use learning outcomes to define what those skills competencies are. It is an interesting issue though, so we have relatively clear or straightforward approach. We had designed or developed what we call EIT label. It's a quality assurance mechanism to make sure that we target skills and competencies that are important for Europe to nurture next generation of innovators and entrepreneurs. In our case, then the focus is specifically on skills competencies that are in the field of innovation and entrepreneurship. And we believe that our knowledge innovation communities attract excellent universities in their specific fields, and these fields are spanning across different thematic areas: energy, digital, healthcare, culture. So it wouldn't be appropriate for us centrally to define or predefine skills and competencies. So our approach is to give flexibility to those innovation communities to define, to look in their thematic fields, what are the specific education needs and how to approach and design the products. So we define high-level skills competencies, very simple learning outcomes approach, and they are adapting them in their specific fields, programs, different levels, master, lifelong learning, etc. And I think it works nicely. We have a lot of good results in feedback received from students or employability and other indicators that we use in our programs.
So I understand correctly, there's also this element of tailor-made that you share.
It is tailor-made, and it must be tailor-made, but in our case, we leave the flexibility to the people who are on the ground. So centrally, it's a really pan-European network, but it's really based on being active in the local ecosystem, because that's where the innovation happens, and that's where the skills and competencies are needed.
And on a very practical manner, do I have to envision myself that your organization puts down a long list of possible competences with a description, and then they pick from that list?
Not exactly. It's not long list. It's very short list. It's 7 main ones: entrepreneurship, creativity, innovation, and then they adapt it in their fields and complement it or combine it with the technical. Because we believe that there are the technical universities who are excellent in their fields. What is missing, or what we try to promote, is adding the innovation and entrepreneurship skills and competencies into the package and integrate them into the education process. So then the graduates are really endowed with skills competencies that enable them to be next generation innovators or entrepreneurs.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So if I remember correctly, John, what we're hearing here is a lot of actually basically not particular European-wide approaches, but very regional approaches. So talking about specific localities, specific contexts. Is this basically making the case for the type of institutions that you represent, being the universities of applied sciences, who are by definition regionally based?
Yeah. I mean, to go back to the original question about what is skills and competencies, of course, we had a seminar recently at Aix-Marseille University in September on the question was skills or knowledge, what do graduates or economies need? Of course, it was a provocative question because the answer is clearly both skills and knowledge. It's not one or the other, and these sort of binary divisions between, on one hand, skills, on the other hand, knowledge are fake, you know. Like you, I'm in the education field. And, you know, we heard from the previous speaker about skills in Hungary, and now we're hearing about the smart specialization strategy. So I'm not asking you a question here. Maybe I'll come on to it in a minute. But in the smart specialization, you know, going back to that, we always thought about the difference between horizontal and vertical priorities, right? So it is about prioritization, of course. As the Slovenian manager for the S3 strategy there rightly says, but you do need an element of horizontal capacity building, especially in less developed regions that don't have already the competences built to be able to specialize in a vertical sense. So, you know, really it's a matter of language, but it's also a matter of structures. You know, the gentleman before talked about the sectoral skills councils in Hungary. And skills are often linked to specific sectors. You know, the competencies you have, you know, entrepreneurial competencies, and you've got competence frameworks at EU level. And that is actually the best way of thinking about it. I think any French speakers here, I think it's one. Compétence, isn't it? Skill is compétence. So I think the French have got it better than the English. Because competence is actually competence is what we really should be speaking about, not skills. It's just that, you know, we've got now in the von der Leyen Commission the union of skills. It should be the union of competences, but it doesn't sound good. Skills is often seen to be vet, whereas competences and knowledge and higher education, but it's a fake binary choice between the two. And that's why I would have been interested to see in the previous presentation how those sectoral skills councils are, and this is where I get joined now with local dimension, are actually linked to the smart specialization priorities. Because you don't have, you know, yes, I said competences for the automotive industry. You wouldn't talk about that. People talk about skills for the automotive industry and entrepreneurial competencies. So it's actually trying to bring the two together. That I think, and now this is to ask you a question, which is exactly what the applied universities do, you know. And that seminar that we had was in the largest university of France, Aix-Marseille, one of the top research-intensive universities in France. But they wanted to work on this subject because they realized that actually the graduates need compétence, that they said was a dirty word in their university, because it's too practical. That's what they need for their jobs. So while you've got our members who have been doing this for a long time, I think you've got higher education moving towards that in different types of their courses. And you've got vet now who realize that their students need knowledge too. So it's this fake binary, and you've got one ministry for the vet who's doing a great job and actually bringing higher education in. You've got another department working on the smart specialization strategies, and I don't really see any clear link between the two, if you don't mind me saying, in Hungary. And I'd be interested to know what the gentleman from Slovenia is doing specifically in the 1.4 of the RDF. If you could actually give some projects. In preparation for this conference, I tried to do a bit of research into what was being funded in 1.4, but of course there's no data on the there's a Cohesion website now with project data, but there's none for this current period. And you know, how are member states, how are you using your 20 million? I mean, if I would like to get some specific examples of that, it'd be interesting, and see how they also have a synergy with things like the EIT are doing.
Okay, so if I remember correctly, two things from your talk is, first of all, we should continue in French, but we'll leave it to that. And secondly, you're talking about smart specialization is all about synergy and talking with each other, with the different stakeholders, but you do mention that, especially in the, let's say, the educational part of it, it's hard because there's VET, there is other elements, and these are not necessarily all well linked to each other, if I phrase that correctly. But Péter was ready to challenge that, or to give an answer to that, or to say how it's working in the Hungarian section. Is that?
Actually, it's not so easy to answer for that, but yeah, I have a favorite example for that. It won't be especially a Hungarian example, but we already talked about it in the coffee break session. It's the AI, for instance, and you can parallelly think about appearing of e-learning. So when e-learning appeared, then informaticians had the status quo to make e-learning materials and started to make them and to give them to students, and nobody used it because although it was very good digitally, but the content was not useful for a geographic teacher, for instance, and so on and so on. So I don't know, it has to be, I don't know, more than 10 years that teachers got known this new knowledge and new practice. And it's also a very interesting question that when we are talking about with AI, we are talking about that we have to learn out some new things, or we have to make a paradigmatical change. Even in teaching and in learning. So it took a while teachers started to use e-learning, for instance, or internet, and it took a while they realized what will be their own new role in that teaching. But I am not very convinced that now when we are having a lot of new digital and other technological things like AI, that it will be enough to find a new role. Maybe we have to absolutely change our approach for learning and teaching, and then we can think about that what we have to teach to students. Do we have to talk about that and so on? I think we have to change our approach absolutely. So I think that now we have a little bit disruptive technological age, or we are on the edge of that.
Do I understand correctly, Peter, that you're also saying that people who are supposed to educate or teach about these competences struggle themselves by having this competence? Is that what I have to remember?
Actually, minimum two issues. They face minimum two issues. The first is that they have to learn out something, but I think it's almost impossible because of this paradigmatical changes. So everything is changing, and the new technology is coming too fast for that. So at first that. The second one is they have to find their new role in this teaching cycle or teaching process.
Okay, I see Marian is
If I may, very quick reaction. I think your example emphasizes or points out a very important aspect, and that's that there are really sometimes a very important external events that really shape the paradigm very much, that we cannot even foresee, with the learning that happened and the technology use that happened with the COVID and the aftermath. That just reminds me that especially now we are in the middle of strategic discussions of shaping up future framework program at the EU level or other strategies for a long period. But I think what is paradigmatically important in the terms of skills and competencies is adaptability. So that, we will not be able now to foresee exactly what types of skills competencies will be paramount in next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But it's important that the next generation are very adaptable to be able to adapt to the situation or to the changes that are coming, and they're definitely coming, and new trends. And also supporting more the lifelong learning, or whatever it's called, like to be sure that we have a reskilling, upskilling, and different supporting mechanism around to be able to support this adaptability in practical terms, and give the instruments and give the tools to people to really throughout their career to be able to jump on the trends and really address what is needed. I think that's really something that stands out in that discussion.
Yeah, it does. However, I remember from what Péter said that we have to teach people how to adapt fast, but the teachers themselves are struggling to do exactly that. It goes so fast that as such is a skill or a competence that we seem to lack, or educators seem to lack. Is that?
Let me even be more provocative. So I am thinking about that what is adaptivity will mean, I don't know, in the future, and what means now. So my problem is with that. So it's always when a new disruptive technology comes in, then like a black swan, as you told, with COVID and so on, that then you have to rethink from the basics.
Okay. Marko, we talk about relationship with educators or trainers in general. How does it work in Slovenia? As John suggested, that how is your relationship within that ecosystem between educators, trainers, and the rest of your stakeholders?
Well, two things. First, we did hold a big conference on future cohesion post 27 a few weeks ago at University of Ljubljana. My ministry organized it under the title "Collaboration is a Skill of the Future." that was a.
That's the second one, aside from adaptability. Yes.
We did put collaboration because it applies to all sectors, to government, to stakeholders, to industries, to SMEs at the end. So we wanted to pass a message that collaboration is a skill that needs to be developed, particularly in relation to internationalization and value chains on European scale. So inter is a must. Collaboration is a must. It's a part of curricula. It must be taught in all aspects. Second point, it's been 40 years since I was working in an IT company. It was a monopoly IT company in Yugoslavia at that time. And it was my company that established first e-classroom in Balkans. It was a company that established an e-classroom in a secondary school which excelled in mathematics in Slovenia, in Ljubljana. So we funded it. I was appointed as a young employee. I was appointed as a leader of the classroom, and my students were then in 10 years directors of the biggest IT company. So a company knows what I want to say. A message I want to say from this lesson from 40 years ago. It's exactly 40 years. That education must be industry driven. In my case, it's industry that developed curricula for a secondary school, and it was a big success. So again, what we hear, if any one of you remembers Bandeman report for information society, knowledge-based society, that was a message. Listen to the industries. We are back again. We are always back again. Listen to what industries want.
And that's a clear message, I remember. The other advantage of being an archaeologist is that when things grow older, I get more interested in them. And one of the discussions that goes a long way, as you say, more than 40 years, is whether or not education has to exactly listen to industry, or whether it has also another task to fulfill. And is that other task not to teach, let's say, the transversal skills, while industry would more or less, they change in a whim from year to year on what exactly they need? Or am I not...
Well, if I may, my personal, now we are in French philosophy. Huh?
Continuing in French,
we can continue in French and do philosophy. My personal opinion on AI is that it's not bigger revolution than appearance of computer or internet or any other. It's just evolution phase in IT. What we will need to reconsider in education in this aspect is soft skills. Soft skills of young generation, particularly ethics. We will have to re-implement the curricula in ethics, otherwise humanity is gone. Huh?
Which was mentioned in the session before us by the colleague from EET as well, that this was an element. Okay, that would be the main.
My main takeaway concerning that in terms of education is strengthen the curricula in ethics and values. That's key for development.
So going back to a humanist educational approach?
Yeah, exactly. Going back to humanist approach, yes. Okay.
Péter, I see you nodding.
Actually, I think it would be a very long discussion if we would talk about that. Let me give you another approach, and maybe it can be a consensus that should. As I see that the school system till now was follower in technology. So if something was already used by companies and the technology was proven, then the school system was implementing that. And now I think where the knowledge is, I don't know, developing so fast, it's not enough anymore. So schools have to be the stakeholders of the new technologies, and not only implementation of new technologies, but also to be adaptive.
Okay. John, I saw you not agreeing on the dichotomy between education.
It's not that I wasn't agreeing, I'm just trying to sort of take it back to the subject of our event in some way. Because, of course, we're always talking in theory about this. I spoke yesterday, we need hybrid, so horizontal and vertical, and we talk a lot about entrepreneurship education. EIT does fantastic work in this area. But when we're trying to think specifically about local priorities, and it's about subsector in a way, and it's not, smart specialization is not just about we own to invest in your automotive and that's it. It has to be more specific about that, and so it's the cross-disciplinary areas that I think are needed, which can match the knowledge and the skills, and maybe didn't do enough to promote my own members, University of Applied Sciences. It's those specific courses that actually, yes, industry they will train their own staff, and we need continuous lifelong learning. But even at the first initial education, there are specific courses that can be given if it was done in a place-based way, which is not, education is not managed in countries, it's too centralized. It's too centralized by national ministries, and there's no regional understanding of what type of tertiary education courses are needed, based on the intelligence of what that region is going to be specializing on in the future. And I'll give you an example. In a German University of Applied Science, they have a course on sales and marketing for the engineering industry. So usually you would study either engineering or you would study sales and marketing. You wouldn't study both. UAS, they do that. So they turn out a specialist in marketing for engineering. So if your region is, would be specialized in that particular area, that's the sort of profile you need. So, University of Applied Science have been doing this for a long time, even though they're relatively young institutions. And now other universities are trying to do it as well, because they know that's what industry wants. That's not denying that they need these entrepreneurial competencies, they need all these high-level soft skills, all that should be for all types of education. That should be routine. But we do need to specialize a bit vertically. And that's what this conference is about. That's what regions need to be able to do, but they've got no power to do that because it's too centralized. There's very few institutions in this world, universities, who are only thinking globally. Most of them have a dual role, and that's not reflected in the policy making and the governance.
So, if I understand correctly, John, you're saying that although this type of institutions is probably ready to adapt to this kind of new challenges, that too centralized policy is holding them back, and so they should be a natural partner to work with the S3 ecosystem, but they're not able to because they're caught in sort of a web that not enables them or to change rapidly, right? Okay.
There are examples where it's changing. I mentioned yesterday Ireland and...
Yes, they're somewhere changing. Is that a feeling for you three, because you do have experience in working with regions? Is education the natural partner, but they're not there yet? They're not ready to go into that skills development?
Well, if I may, well, they are not so far from Budapest. We have a good example of Linz, the city of Linz that hosts one of the strongest infrastructure for demo in ICT, Ars Electronica, which is a soft education demo center, maybe one of the strongest in the wider region. And Austria, with the municipality of Linz, decided to establish a new university in Linz based on experience of Ars Electronica. And this university will be focused on industrial transition, which means key enabling technologies and everything that goes along with it. What I emphasize is that they are doing that on a basis of success of Ars Electronica, which is an endeavor that in first place favors soft measures, arts. To give you an example, automotive industries were mentioned a couple of times here. Mercedes, 10 years ago, when they started to develop autonomous vehicle, decided to test implications of implementing autonomous vehicle in the streets in Ars Electronica. They subcontracted Ars Electronica for 2 years project to test the interaction, real life interaction between a car, robot, and community, people, and the traffic, of course. And they did I was there in Ars Electronica observing the experimentation. They did it with a fleet of 80 drones, challenging the operational car in a test environment.
So that's an example how, yes, industry can be driven, can drive educational reform in a way.
Exactly, and requests the establishment of new university that will focus on interdisciplinary approach to high tech and deep tech.
Okay.
Particularly deep tech. Huh?
Yes, which is also what John was advocating for. Marian, you have another example, or you disagree?
I wanted to just one remark on that. I think it's very important to differentiate if we talk about education as function or as a stakeholder in the process. And I think what we see is that also the industry has a very big role, and if we approach it as a function, they are able to come up with very significant and strong education programs and activities. Look at the Google, look at the other global players, which don't wait for universities to adjust to the trends. They come up with a very strong programs, and they are able to adapt faster, obviously. I think that then the question is, of course, for the public domain to define what are the areas where as a society, we need education. That market doesn't simply answer that. But let's put these philosophical questions aside. From my perspective, I think it's critical to define that collaborative role between the industry and the education also as a stakeholders. So what is the university business cooperation? I've been attending years different platforms and different discussions about the university business cooperation. I think we have a very good progress at the EIT initiatives that we try to bring it up front, and I think it's longevity also, not just the projects that are designed for a specific reason, for a specific aspect, but that there really is ecosystem around that supports that cooperation and that brings the ideas and that brings the effect and impact actually in terms of skills, competencies, and the economic effects in terms of smart specialization, job creation, growth.
I like your remark on seeing education as either a function or a stakeholder, which indeed does lead us away a little bit from this bad.
If you allow, my answer was straight. Education is a stakeholder. On the case of Linz, it's a strong stakeholder that is coming into a game. It's a game changer.
I think both of them is very important. So it's important to for universities to answer for the market needs. For instance, your example, so we have also in Hungary Mercedes, BMW and so on, and they need engineers, but it's also important that that universities are going on with their basic researches and other researches too. So I think if there is a balance, then it's the best scenario. And in Hungary, we are forcing both of scenarios, which means that our office are writing out calls and tenders for cooperation between companies and universities, and there are calls when universities are stakeholders, and there are others when companies, even big companies, are stakeholders. And it's also very important to divide a little bit the big companies, international companies who are bringing into the country already something, I don't know, a big research with a big fund at the background, and it's also a difference when you have to work or not work, but you have to convince small companies.
Well, we heard a lot about the SMEs or the small companies yesterday. It's of course a very typical European product or existence. We also heard yesterday that we are lagging behind in the 60% of lifelong learners, so meaning not necessarily university students, but people in the world of work who need a retraining in some way. Is that the public, Marko, that is coming to your competence centers, and does that work? The lifelong learners, the people who already are in a job but do come to the competence center to get some sort of retraining?
Everything was said. Everything was said yesterday. Vocational training is, of course, a part of the thing. Reskilling of the working force is, of course, the top priority. Upskilling as well. So all these aspects come to the envelope.
Does it work in the example of your competence centers in Slovenia? Do you see a good take-up? Does it increase your percentage of people engaging in this type of lifelong learning?
We do not have a thorough evaluation of that, but yes, companies, for example, are receiving vouchers for upskilling. They come to our demo centers, to test and also to experiment with new production lines, to experiment with their workforce. They would receive voucher.
Okay. John, is that a European trend that students also in universities of applied sciences are getting older, in the sense that not just their age, but meaning that they do have more work experience rather than being 17, 18-year-olds straight out of high school. Is that a European trend at the moment? Do we have numbers on that?
I haven't got any data on it, if that's what you're asking for, of how much. We do know that lifelong learning tends to happen more locally, because when you get older, you might have a family, you can't go off to a university in another city, another country, and so the applied universities tend to be more locally based, and therefore we've got a higher share of lifelong learners. But you know, we're trying to work on data for this, because I think it would be something to be. It would be good for us if we could demonstrate that quantitatively. So that is a trend, but it's a trend that's expected to increase, you know, as the population ages, and the model of studying many years at the beginning of your life and then working is going to change too, because education is becoming too expensive. So whether it's a short initial education and coming back to education, or if it's a dual forms of education, this is coming in high. It's not just vet, higher education has dual as well. There's a whole European University Alliance on it. That is something that we're definitely seeing as a trend, yes.
Okay. Are there at the moment any questions from the public already? We still have a few minutes. I see that.
Sorry, my question is to Marko and Péter. Obvious, from what I've understood, the smart specialization in Slovenia is very linked to skills development. So you link the competence center to the priority. From my understanding, in Hungary, there is no link between skills and smart specialization. I mean, that's my understanding, right? From your and the previous speaker. Would that be, my question is there a competitive advantage for Slovenia to have this linkage? Do you see a return on investment because you've got the stronger strategy? Do you see yourself in the way of growing faster economically? This is my point about the return on investment.
So if I understand correctly, there are two questions. The first one is for you. There's a clear link, and do you see a benefit from that? And then the second one, is it missing or not in Hungary? But we'll discuss that. Do you see a clear advantage of having such a framework that links your smart specialization with skills?
Well, that's what the industries say. The main point in our smart specialization is that we created strategic clusters under each domain of priority fields of smart specialization. So we have strategic clusters as a difference to clusters in general. And the industries that are the members within those clusters, they would value the envelope dedicated to competence appraisals. Our strategic clusters receive funding from the government, and they are obliged to prepare action plans that include human resource development. So they are vitally interested. We are 2 million population, and of course industries are vitally interested to have a clear policy on human resource development and skills and competences, etc. So human resource is a major issue for our industries, and therefore answer is yes. If I answer on behalf of our industries, which are our main stakeholders, of course.
Okay. And then the second part of your question was maybe slightly provocative, but does it exist such a clear link in Hungary, to your knowledge, between yes, we need these skills and these are the smart specialization strategies we have, and are they clearly linked or not? Can you answer that question? There's a microphone there, sorry.
Maybe I didn't hear the question clearly, so...
My understanding is from the previous speaker that your skills program is not linked to smart specialization priorities.
The skill development is not included in S3 strategy. That is the...
is it or is it not? That's the question.
It's true, and now we want to... That's why one of these are the causes, the reasons why we want to now revise the strategy, and next year we will do that. To be maybe a little bit too honest, that in Hungary we had some challenges to make the policymakers to take seriously the S3 strategy, but I think due to our colleagues' huge work and to the EU feedbacks, I think it's changing already. So there are other issues also with that. For instance, maybe my colleague yesterday already mentioned the lack of regional pillars of strategy and so on, and now we revised it. Now we are under a revising process of the strategy. And the other thing is that why your question is very good, that now we involve some hubs like the Hungarian Entrepreneurs Association and organizations like that who are also focusing on that question. And I think during the next year in the new strategy there will be a framework for that.
Okay, does it hopefully answer somehow your question. But I do think also on a personal note that this strong interlinking between these elements is vital, and also the fact that you value every stakeholder in the process, whatever they are doing. As I may speak from example in the city of, or the region of Leuven, where we are based as well, we do have a very strong network there, and it works very well because all partners at, let's say, different levels are valued of what they're doing. And for example, for us, for the University of Applied Science, we have a very important position, not because we deliver PhDs and not because we do have top-notch researchers, but because this researcher needs about 10 people working in the lab, cleaning the lab, taking care of the children, etc. So there is a clear connection needed between all these players and what they can do. Are there any other questions that are additional to that? You can use the microphone from Richard.
Thank you. I checked, I have 5 minutes to ask a question, so I took my freedom.
Good.
To develop skills, and to whether it will be educational or really hands-on skills, we need infrastructure. And for us in Latvia, it's quite a struggle to get appropriate funding for infrastructure, because either you need co-funding or something, so there are always limitations. Do you have any success stories to share how you do it, maybe in Hungary, in Slovenia, in a broader level? So infrastructure for skills.
Can you be more specific on what type of infrastructure you have in mind?
Well, actually, any infrastructure, like, let's take laboratories or some sophisticated, not tools, but, well, things you use, really hardware to work on, okay, that you would consider infrastructure that you cannot move from country to country.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Marko?
Yeah, I have a straight, if you want, I have a straight answer. In this financial perspective, we have two major investments in infrastructure in both university, Ljubljana and Maribor. Both investments are backed by industry-driven interests, so labs. Community of Practice for S3 was a program enabled us to strengthen the business interest in the whole venture. So we had the Technopolis experts coming to Slovenia and having a thorough dialogue with deans of both universities on how to increase the participation of businesses while creating a business model for investment in labs, already at cost-benefit analysis stage. So we have a relatively good and fresh delivery from Technopolis in the framework of S3 community of practice on the question of how to create business model to increase the participation of private sector in infrastructure which is in ownership of public sector, meaning universities. So we can share that with you.
We'd appreciate that. So as I understood, you have a lab which is owned by universities, but is also used by the private sector.
Exactly. The final goal is to increase the flow with businesses beyond the allowed margin of state aid regulations.
Okay, Marian, you.
So in our case, and I will be speaking generally at the EIT and the higher education initiative specifically, which is designed to support the universities becoming innovative actors. Obviously, when we talk about the concrete equipment and the lab, we are under Horizon Europe rules, so it applies the same way as in other type of projects. But for me, the question of infrastructure is a broader one, because what we see generally is not only just the technical equipment, but really TTOs or the infrastructure in terms of cooperation with business, how long-term sustainable connections are created. And this is where we really can be very of a help through this initiative and through the projects. The initiative is designed in a way that university consortia as applicants come up with what we call Innovation Vision Action Plan when they design their pathway to become more innovative in a long term, meaning how do they aim to achieve institutional change, boosting their innovation and entrepreneurship capacity, including creating the infrastructure, and then get funding for first 2-year concrete project activities. So we also embed sustainability in a way that we expect those consortia to continue, because it's their own journey, it's to their own benefit. And we can speak hours about the concrete aims of the initiative, but this is generally how it is designed. And I'm mentioning it because now we have an open call, which is finishing 12th of December. And for us, this is a very successful initiative, which really supports the universities. Currently, we have more than 60 projects already through 3 years funded, and now we are aiming to select another 42 projects. So it's a very big boost.
Okay. Well, thank you for the question. I'll have to end it here because our time is up. We moved from French philosophy all the way to practical calls and money. So I think that was quite a lot within 1 hour. I'd like to thank you for your questions and for being here, and also for the panelists for this very engaging and motivation discussion. So thanks a lot.